health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to the Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a wife, a busy mom of 3, and the founder of the cutting-edge supplement brand Accelerated Health Products. This podcast is more than just a source of information. It's a community for you and those looking to optimize your health. And I release new episodes every Monday and Tuesday live and a bonus one on Thursday. So remember to subscribe and add to your playlist so you never miss a show. There is no downside to joining my free health group coaching on Telegram. I teach you on a daily basis. I answer your questions and you hear from everybody else to see what's working for them. It's amazing. The details can be found on my website, sarabantahealth.com. My goal, and I need your help, is to reach everyone who needs me with my message of healing. So help me with this goal. Share this podcast with a few of your friends and loved ones, and together we can empower each other on our journey to optimal health. I'm super excited about today. We've got Jim Law and Jim Girard. Yes, Jim times 2, both back talking about the BioCharger. They are the leads, and Jim Law has served as a managing member of Advanced Biotechnologies since co-founding the firm in 2013. And Jim Girard brings more than 25 years of subtle energy research and development experience to the team. Welcome, both of you. How are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
I am great. I love talking about my favorite machine. And we had you on before. So if anyone missed that episode, definitely go back. But today I wanted to talk about grounding. And I know you're going to tell me that the machine does so much more than just grounding. But in a world where we've got air pollution, we've got water contamination, we've got processed foods that makes up 70% of the American diet. We've got heavy metals, EMFs, and radiation. In fact, I'm going on a plane right after this, and I know that I'm expecting some inflammation in my body without a calorie, because that's what radiation and travel does to you. But there's something about this amazing machine that just brings everything back. And so I want to talk about grounding in general. What does it mean to be grounded? And people really don't understand what it means. It kind of means like, hey, come back to earth, but in a literal way. But can we start out by talking about what is grounding?
Sure. I think that's a great question. And I think some people may misconstrued what the word grounding is. In my opinion, I think that it's more that you become an antenna in the air. So really the idea is we're surrounded by all this electrical energy, specifically from lightning discharge. You know, we have those 8 million lightning strikes on the planet every day. That's 100 every second. That's maintaining this electric charge in the atmosphere. So as the further away you get from the earth ground, you actually measure a higher potential, up to 1 million volts. So like when Ben Franklin threw his kite up in the air, even on a clear day, you know, he could measure a difference of potential almost of 1 million volts. So what I believe is actually happening is when you make the connection to the earth, now you become more of the antenna, that you actually start collecting some of those electrons that are being discharged from the lightning that, you know, goes through you into ground. So it is somewhat being as grounded, but I think that the important part is actually being that insulation, so your connection, so you can actually be higher up the ground to actually collect those electrons.
I don't think people realize that we're electrical. So maybe talk about that a little bit. And, you know, I had no idea until I had heard you talk about the fact that we have so many lightning strikes in a day or in a year. You just hear about the big storms and seeing those, but you don't hear about the ones that are constantly coming.
Sure. I mean, you know, part of our belief is, you know, I like to look at first from a macrocosm where we're looking at the universe itself. So, not only is the Earth producing 100 lightning strikes every second, 8 million every day, but every other planet's doing the same thing. The sun, what we call solar flares or solar storms, are nothing but atmospheric discharges that contributes to what we call cosmic rays. So when we go outside, it isn't about it's because we're getting away from work and things like that, or we're getting away from our thoughts, but it's really reconnecting to that universal energy that's actually coming at us. It's coming at us from those lightning discharges maintaining the electric field to the each unique hundreds of thousands of radio frequencies and harmonics that each one of those strikes produces that all have an impact on a microcosm all the way down to the cellular level. So, here we are, we're outside, we're exposed to all this natural energy, but what happens as um, what's it actually doing on a cellular level? When you think about it, our bodies are really electric, our brain, our heart, our nervous system, cell function specifically. So, when you think about, how our bodies operate, you have your brain that sends us has neurotransmitters, neurons that trigger a signal that goes all the way down to, say if it's the trigger hormones going to, different glands to tell it to secrete the hormone, and then delivering that all the way down to on a cellular level. And those are all electrical impulses that drive that whole function, all the way from your brain pulsing to then triggering the neuron. So each one of those going all the way down to on a cellular level, now it's dealing with how we uptake nutrients and detoxify. So, in healthy cellular function, you have these negative and positive charges surrounding the cell membrane. And when it's sufficient enough, it triggers ion channels. It could be the sodium potassium pump, which is ATP or your cell's battery. It could be the uptake of hormones, proteins, nutrients. And then there's a detoxification effect. So as we age, this resting membrane potential drops, and its ability to trigger these healthy cellular functions diminish. But when we go outside, we are exposed to some of this natural energy to help charge your cells back up, or at least maintain that charge that helps us continue to have this healthy cellular function. So
I
what the BioCharger does is, in the absence of all that, we can take all of what nature is providing and bring it indoors.
I love that you're talking about cellular energy. If you have listened to me before, I'm all about ATP. It's all about the mitochondrial diet, whatever it is, because our health, our longevity is not about a paleo diet or a carnivore diet. It's about the health of your cells. And if your cells can't get the nutrients in or the toxins out, we will die, right? So this brings up and it's a beloved person that we both know. Her daughter was in the hospital for 3 weeks suffering from ulcerative colitis, parasites, other things. Anyway, week 3, she says to the nurses, can we take her outside? She never went outside for 3 weeks. Can you imagine how crazy you would go being healthy in a healthy body for just 1 day without seeing the outside atmosphere and the sun or anything like that? And that's part of the healing. Now, would she have loved to have had her BioCharger in the hospital room? Yeah, that probably wasn't practical, but at the same time, that would be amazing. So this also brings up the fact that cancer rates for people under the age of 50 have increased significantly. So many people are being forced to look into their health because these unexplained symptoms are coming, right? So more people are coming to me going, I don't know where this is coming from. What do I do? But they don't know how to eat right. They don't know how to exercise yet. And it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg. When I hit my rock bottom, and my practitioner, he said, Sara, we're going to work on your foundation, your physical foundation, before we start working on your mental health. This brings the question to you as like, when you take somebody who is sick or not feeling optimal, putting them in front of the BioCharger to charge them up, help them ground, help starting with the detoxification or just restoring homeostasis, then they're going to have the energy to do the other things, right? So
Yeah,
go ahead, Jim.
yeah. So you made a great point earlier. I mean, our bodies are constantly under attack, right? From the toxins that are in our environment. Some we can see, some we don't. We have our water is in many cases contaminated. The food we eat, even engineered to not be healthy for us, unfortunately, in some ways. So our bodies, more than ever before, are under attack. And a little known fact is that and this is a report from the EPA. I'm gonna rattle off a couple of stats for you from both the EPA and the CDC. Neither of whom I'm huge fans of, but are great reporting agencies. So EPA reported less than 24 months ago, that 93% of our time is spent indoors as Americans. And it turns out that other civilized nations are very similar. And because we're indoors 93% of the time, our bodies are not able to get access to the natural energy. So you talk about grounding, and part of that is PEMF, pulse electromagnetic fields. So there's 4 energies that exist in nature that are all scientifically and medically validated to be as vital to our health and wellness as food and water. But because we're inside and not only blocked from those energy sources, or nature, but we're surrounded by man-made energies that I think we can all agree are not what Mother Nature designed for our bodies to use to have proper cellular health. And so when we look and say, is there an association between all this time indoors or lack of time in nature and our health? In the last 5 years, the CDC reported 5 years ago that 4 in 10 American adults had at least one form of chronic disease. Which was startling at that point. What's more startling is that as of last year, that has gone to 6 in 10. So 60% of American adults have at least one form of chronic disease. Now, they studied, and the work of Dr. Jerry Tennant, which is quite well known, he wrote a book, Healing is Voltage, but really drove a lot of the research to identify that out of 80 chronic diseases, they found one single common characteristic, and it was inadequate cellular voltage. And as Jim alluded to earlier, without proper voltage, the 2 primary functions of healthy cells, which is uptake of nutrients and elimination of toxicity, which at the cellular level is free radicals and oxidative stress, those capabilities diminish. And the significance of that, as you know, and many of your audience do, is that while we're sitting here, we're regenerating 3 to 4 million cells per second. That translates to 330 billion cells a day. 1% of our entire body is regenerated each day. And because the only way our body can truly heal, recover, rejuvenate, or revitalize is through regeneration of new cells, the absence of the proper energy level at those cells is causing the health of those new regenerated cells to diminish, and unhealthy cells, unhealthy body. So, as Jim pointed out, what the BioCharger essentially does is replicates and amplifies those 4 energies, so that by sitting next to it, either by yourself or with up to 3 or 4 other, even 5 other people, can simultaneously receive these energies in a way that is biocompatible, and our cells can actually now regenerate with the proper voltage. And so our body's making perfect new cells. So all we have done is supplied the missing ingredient to our bodies, in which they need to heal themselves, because the body is the ultimate healing machine.
It's amazing. I have a quick question where I will be doing a program and touch somebody, but then if I do another program, or if I feel like really charged up and I've been doing it for a while, the other person will shock me. Does that mean that my voltage has gotten to an optimal state, and that's where the shock is coming from? Or what's going on there? Why am I getting shocked later on, but not initially?
I think that it really depends on the stage of the recipe that probably drives that, and the proximity that you are to the biocharger itself. So depending on who's closer or further away, that closeness is what really drives that that little spark that's created between you. And the closer you get, the bigger the spark would happen.
And if you think of and when we talk about shock, this isn't a huge electrical shock. No one's getting hurt. You might get a tiny little finger burn or something like that. But you can definitely it's definitely evidence that there's energy. And if you think about it, Sarah, you're now I hate to use this metaphor because you're much more than a car battery. But if you were a car battery with a full charge, and the person walks up to you, it's a car battery with that's got very little charge. By you're the jumper cables now when you touch, and so the fully charged battery is basically discharging to the dead battery, and so that's kind of the effect of what's happening.
Okay, that makes sense. So I want to go back to the 4 different energies. Can we discuss how we have all 4 of those in there and how the BioCharger uses those 4 energies?
Jim is a master at describing that, as you know, but he's got a really good way of talking about how they all occur in nature, and then how they all have a different effect on achieving that optimal cellular performance. So they'll work differently to achieve the same goal. So I'll turn it over to the master.
Yeah. So what's happening with the 4 different energy fields? First you have the electric field. So as alluded to a little earlier, you have these positive, negative charges surrounding the cell membrane, and as that charge gets sufficient enough, it triggers ion channels. That could be the sodium, potassium pump, and hormones, proteins, nutrients. And as we age, its ability to trigger that diminishes. So what happens is when you apply an electric field across the cell membrane, it actually triggers the cell membrane to open up or porate. It actually, in technical terms, it stresses the dielectric of the cell membrane to trigger holes that can be controlled through voltage and frequency impulses to allow things to move in and out. So the effect that you get with the electric field is it makes the cell membrane more permeable to trigger these healthy cellular functions that include the ATP, the mitochondrial functions, sodium, potassium pump, hormones, proteins. Now, magnetic fields sort of do the same thing, but in a different way. So if I apply a magnetic field to a cell membrane, it's not going to stress the cell membrane to trigger those ion channels. But what it does do is it affects the ions that are surrounding the cell membrane. So as those ions are moving around, they're moving closer and further away from your cell membranes. As they move, like in food or diet or whatever it is, it's making the ions. As they move through the presence of a magnetic field, they pick up an electric charge like a generator would that increases that charge potential to again trigger the healthy cellular function. So the magnetic field works with the ion charges surrounding the cell membrane, whereas the electric field works with the membrane itself, but they both accomplish the effect of uptake the nutrients and detoxify. So thirdly, we produce the radio frequencies and harmonics. So that's a little bit different. So, there's a magnetic and electrical property on a cellular level, but there's also a vibrational component, specifically the magnetic resonance. So if you ever had an MRI, it's based off of a principle called magnetic resonance imaging or magnetic resonance. So the principle behind magnetic resonance is every cell, every molecule, every organ absorbs and emits a specific frequency unique to itself, and they can actually identify that based off the wave function. So when you get in an MRI, what they do is they produce a very uniform magnetic field, and then they bounce various radio waves, and how you emit and absorb those radio waves, the difference of those, they actually create an imaging. So that's how they could determine if it's what a healthy body would look versus an unhealthy body, or an unhealthy cell versus a unhealthy cell. It's not like it's what you're looking at is an image that the MRI makes. It's actually a mathematical representation of how these things absorb and emit energy or radio frequency. So what that means is every cell is like a one-band radio receiver tuned to a specific frequency. And if you generate that right radio station or frequency, you can transfer energy into it through sympathetic vibration. So if you ever had music class or physics class, and they do the experiment where they have two tuning forks in the exact same pitch, if I strike one and it starts to vibrate, it'll actually cause the other one to vibrate in your hand without having to strike it. Now, if I take another tuning fork of a different pitch and I do that, nothing would happen. Similarly, in a car radio, when I set my car radio at, say, 95.1, I only pick up one station and that's it. And what's actually happening is that if I set my car radio at 95.1, I'm literally vibrating the antenna at 95 megahertz, and I have a radio receiver that actually picks up that signal. Now, if I get really close to that radio tower, I get a really good signal, but I could actually change the radio station to actually pick up a radio station further away than where I'm sitting right next to. And it's because it's picking up these vibrations. So your cell's the same way. So if you generate the right radio station, you actually can transfer energy into the cell. So what the BioCharger is doing is it's producing hundreds of thousands of different radio frequencies and harmonics that span the entirety of all of the magnetic resonance spectrum, as well as what they call the molecular band spectrum. So that entirety of that spectrum of frequencies is from zero to visible light. So when we go outside and we're in nature, those lightning discharges, as I mentioned earlier, there's hundreds of thousands of unique harmonics being generated with each lightning strike. So you get hundreds sets of hundreds of thousands of harmonics each second. So we're exposed to that natural energy, and we're actually designed. So our cells are actually designed to actually pick up all these different radio signals from the lightning discharge. So what we're doing, with the BioCharger then is sort of mimicking that and adding the energy at all these different levels to actually help the body. And then finally, we have a light component. So light is a very important part of life. And what we're doing is we're producing about 1,000 different wavelengths in the infrared, far infrared, near infrared, visible light spectrum. So when you look at it from a frequency spectrum, we're covering the entirety from zero to visible light. That's, so we're trying to mimic what that natural energy is outside.
Amazing. So just to be clear, say you're running a program for Epstein-Barr virus and I have it, but then my daughter's sitting next to the machine as well. She doesn't have Epstein-Barr. It's not going to give her Epstein-Barr. It's not going to just it's not going to swing the pendulum to the other side, correct? It's just matching what is in your body. If the frequency is how am I supposed to say this? Is trying to negate the pathogen per se in the body. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, like with the pathogen is many different levels. I mean, like in food processing, for instance, they use a high voltage gradient electric field in industrial food processing to help manage pathogens. Instead of boiling it now, most of the industrial processing is actually doing it. So when you talk about pathogens and things like that, there are many different effects, whether it's the electric field or the magnetic field. But with radio frequencies and harmonics, everything's looking for its tuned frequency. And so, for instance, if you talk about an unhealthy cell, what will normally happen is when you produce these fields, they sort of morph the cell a little bit for that period of time to be more of that normal state. So one of the effects with the magnetic field it actually works more so with the cell membrane itself and how it forms. It's not so much it breaks down the dielectric, but some of the new recent research are saying it's almost like somatics. If you ever see where they put a bunch of sand on a plate and they start to vibrate it at different frequencies, and it would create different geometrical patterns on the plate that they're vibrating with the sand, and you can see all sorts of different shapes with it. Well, what they're finding is magnetic fields sort of do that with the cell membrane itself to help reform that shape with it. So electric fields and magnetic fields sort of bring it back into the shape it needs to be, and at that point, it's absorbing more of those natural frequencies that they're looking for.
Got it. Well, when I mentioned all of the toxins and the radiation and everything that we are being exposed to, and our bodies are just like a punching bag, right? And we're just trying to keep our heads above water. I would say the biggest complaints today are sleep, stress, mood, inflammation, and then of course pain. Can we talk about how the BioCharger addresses some of those big issues?
Sure, I can do it at a high level, and Jim can certainly go deep as you've already been able to see. So one of the concepts, what we talked about when we talk about these energies. So you've also made great points that nutrition's a key ingredient to good health as well as exercise. But the energy, hopefully everyone can realize now the energetic component is vital as well. So the overall benefit when we run a let's just call it a wellness recipe, and recipes are energy and frequency programs that are designed for specific outcomes. So we're not only combining all these energies so that you can have a touch-free experience and your body can absorb all these energies, but as Jim alluded to, the frequencies can allow us to target specific outcomes. So the general overall benefit of the BioCharger, for example, to everyone is to give our bodies the energy it needs to function optimally. But then when you start to look at things like Epstein-Barr or chronic conditions, or whether it's emotional, anxiety, mental, a lot of mental clarity, we get brain fog, especially when our energy levels are low. We're not detoxifying properly, so we're building a lot of toxicity up in our body. This is where the kind of beauty of the concept of the recipes applies. So we can use, and all these are calculated, and there's many TED Talks now out on how they're able to target better outcomes by using specific frequencies. But we're able to now create these recipes that target those specific conditions and outcomes because of the way that the frequencies align with those conditions. So people that have trouble with sleep, one of the recipes we have is for theta wave, and it just takes your brain from alpha or beta, or just very stressed state, back to homeostasis almost, and to kind of get that autonomic nervous system rebalanced. We spend all our time in a sympathetic state now, and we need to be in the parasympathetic. So it's very effective at that. And it's not like something where you took a sleeping pill and it makes you tired and drugs you. It actually just calms your mind so that when you do go to sleep, you get, and most of us wear wearables now. So if you measure your sleep and quality sleep, you'll notice a distinct increase for things like that. For conditions like migraines, we've seen just amazing results. And again, going back to knowing what frequencies to help rebalance your body so that you're not experiencing that. And then, one of the things that energy does when it gets back into your body. So when your body first gets the energy it needs, it wants to clean house. So detoxification is a huge part of that, and we're doing it at the cellular level. But when you think about all the toxicity, including parasites and things like that are built up in our system, most people find that after the first 2 weeks of using the BioCharger, that they have seen things that they've never seen before. I'll just leave it at that. But boy, do they feel good when they've gone through that. And then just take it a step further, parasites. Probably a lot of your audience like sushi. I love sushi, but if you eat sushi, you have parasites. And there's more and more research that shows how parasites can actually, for example, be partially a root cause to prostate cancer. So you want to get those things out of your body. And there are recipes that we have that have specific frequencies that were calculated based on the characteristics of different types of parasites, so that when you run that recipe, it's literally ridding those parasites, and you'll notice that. And sometimes there's some pretty interesting things that you notice at that point as well.
Yeah, I always run the parasite program a couple days before and after the full and the new moon. And I've heard stories of what people see in the toilet right afterwards. And even with candida, everybody's got candida. That's another one of my favorite programs. I wanted to touch on, a year ago, it was about a year ago, I traveled across country, came back, and my symptoms usually when I travel are just inflammation, edema, bloat. And then, of course, you're so exhausted that you can't fall asleep, right? So I literally got home at 10 or 11 at night and I sat myself in the recliner chair next to the BioCharger and I did an inflammation program and a sleep program, had a great night of sleep, and I woke up as if I didn't even go anywhere. My body was back to normal. It felt amazing. And something else that over the last couple of months, those who have been following me know that I've suffered from a little bit of an inflammation in my optic nerve due to the varicella virus that is being triggered by the spike protein and some other things. So what happened was I then, once I was diagnosed, I started doing my supplements, of course, because it's not just one thing, guys. It's diet, it's exercise, it's the way you sleep, it's the BioCharger and all of this stuff together. I did the optic nerve program, and I also did the varicella or the herpes program because it's in the same family. Within a week, my vision was back. And before I knew what was causing it, and I would have this vision blurriness throughout the day. And of course, screen time made it a lot worse. And here I have to do podcasts in front of my computer. I would do Get the Edge or some mental alertness programs really quick before I would have to go on and do a podcast. And regardless of how blurry my vision was, it would come right back. Now, that was a temporary, program to just help it for that moment because I didn't know what the root cause was. And then as soon as I found out the root cause, it took care of it. So of course, we're not claiming that this cures anything, but the belief is that it literally is letting your body do what it's meant to do. Your body is the miracle, right? So once we get ourselves grounded or back to homeostasis, the body can work the way it's supposed to. And that ATP goes up so that your cells have the energy to detox and absorb the nutrients, which is so much more important nowadays because our food is so lacking in nutrients anyway, it's crazy because we're eating food and it's not converting into energy. And there's this mishap that you think, okay, just because I'm eating, I'm going to get energy. That's not the case. And so many people are suffering from chronic disease because of a lack of cellular energy. I heard you talk about HRV, and I wanted to touch on the before and after of HRV and what is even HRV. My Aura Ring tells me what my HRV is, and every morning my ring either yells at me or tells me I've done a really good job. And the HRV is one of those factors. Can we talk about that and the BioCharger?
Sure. First of all, you're right. A lot of us now look at HRV as a benchmark of health, and it's being more scientifically accepted and used in high performance athletics for years, but now is kind of more in the general population is very familiar with it. And what it's really doing is measuring your autonomic nervous system, the state of it. And to those that I'm sure most people recognize that heart rate variability is if you had a pulse of 60 beats per second, 60 beats per minute. Heart rate variability is the variation between gaps in each of those heartbeats. So there's not an equal second between each heartbeat. There's a difference between each heartbeat, and the greater the range of difference, the more your body is tuned to your autonomic nervous system. So you're in homeostasis. So what we've seen, and unfortunately with a lot of the wearables, The HRV is kind of measured once or twice a day, so it's hard to get an immediate before after. There are products out there that measure HRV very precisely, and we have to use something called a V-scan, which allows you to measure your 300 heartbeats. You put on a clamp on your wrist, and so you can do a scan. Takes about 3 to 4 minutes, and then it will actually graphically show you the state of your your stress levels, where you are in terms of parasympathetic versus sympathetic. Even shows your biological versus chronological age. And by simply running one recipe for 15 minutes and going back and running the scan again, you can literally put the examples up side by side, and more than 80% of the time you see a fairly significant improvement in your HRV scores. It reduces your stress levels. You're back more into the parasympathetic state. Your biological age goes down. So that's always a favorite. But it's really good. And what we also found is that when people's HRV doesn't improve, in many cases their body is in such tough shape that it's literally not knowing what to do with the energy. And it's so you can make an argument that you need to use the BioCharger even more, and eventually it comes out and improves. And the most important thing is there's a compounding effect. So doing that once is going to show you an improvement in your HRV in a moment. But doing it over time shows a trend in which you're much more of your waking hours in the parasympathetic state, which is kind of where you want to be. So yeah, it's a great tool.
That makes sense. So there's some people when they are eating the processed foods and they're doing the standard American everything, they say, well, I feel great. I don't have bloat. I don't have leaky gut. I don't have, because they're so numb, they don't know what is going on in the body. And through my practice, helping them eliminate stuff, cleanse their body. And then they have one bad meal and they go, oh, I feel awful, because now they're in tune with their body, which makes me ask, why would some people like me, I feel the machine like right away. What do you tell somebody if they don't feel anything from sitting by the BioCharger?
Well, it's I would say that about 75+% of the people in the first session feel something. They may not know what it is, but they feel something, and it's really fun to observe, because we'll start to see people that may have had a shoulder injury that didn't say anything to us start to rub their shoulder and feel a tingling sensation there, or joints, or in their head a lot of times. So you'll see different effects. People that don't feel it, it's kind of like a lot of people do IV drips, right? And they go and it takes an hour or whatever to do the drip. And most of the time you don't feel something right away, but within a period of time, then it's helping your body. So even though you may not get that instant quick hit, because that's how we're programmed, we want to, most of us would acknowledge that we didn't get in the poor health we are overnight. So you can't expect the BioCharger to miraculously, put you back to, your best self in one session. So, but what we do say is that if somebody's serious about wanting to notice the before and after difference, find a way to use the BioCharger 3 to 4 times a week for 2 weeks, and target the outcome, either your health challenge or your health desire or goal. And if you target that within 1 week, you'll feel and know that you're on the right track, and you'll start to notice things like, I am sleeping better. And we all know when your body's can go into deep sleep, it heals better. Things like, I'll give you an example. We had a client who had a tremendous back injury, soft tissue, couldn't be solved, had to have Had spinal taps, had tried acupuncture, conventional and holistically, but wasn't making any progress. And after, we gave her the 2-week challenge. And the third time that she came in, which was the end of the first week, and we deliberately don't ask. We just want to let them experience it and do that. But she said, "Can I ask you a question?" She said, "The first time I biocharged, I could feel a tingling sensation in my head when I left. And the second time that I came in, I could feel it while I was there." And she said, "Now I'm going to tell you, my back is feeling a little bit better, and I'm not going to say it's all the way there, but there is some improvement in pain relief. But for the first time in 5 years, I haven't clogged the bathroom drain because I have alopecia." And she's never had an issue again.
Wow.
And to your earlier, example of sometimes you'll use a recipe to help you kind of treat the symptom. One of the things that we practice is we look at the functional medicine model, and we try and identify root cause. And so that we're actually creating software now that, for example, if someone had acne, I mean, you already know, Sarah, that the BioCharge is amazing with skin, whether it's you just want more glow, or you've got, a skin condition, name any of them, but we've got great examples of where it's been improved. But with acne, within 3 or 4 days, you can notice a before and after difference, even the most extreme cases of it. And within a week to 10 days, it's gone. But within about 2 weeks after that, it's on its way back. Unless you look at what the root cause is, and the functional medicine model will tell you that liver is the root cause of most skin conditions. And so now, and again, we don't cure anything, we support recovery from. But if you combine using a 12 or 14-minute liver support recipe in conjunction with the acne, that 2-week period becomes permanent. So we actually see that condition actually go away.
And when you throw in my liver flushes every 3 months, just like I recommend, I do them every 8 weeks, you will have even better results. And I have to tell you, I do the liver gallbladder program every single morning because of the importance of liver. I love the skin programs, the hair programs, all of that. And skin, people are having these skin rashes come out over the last 4 years because the skin is the largest organ. It's the #1 detox organ. So when these things need to come out, they're like coming out of your pores and all your leg, your face, your scalp, wherever it is. But yes, you want to address the root cause first. But it's all about the liver. And remember, that liver is taking on the air pollution, the radiation, the processed foods, the heavy metals, the fluoride and the bromide and the chlorine in everything that we're taking in. And I live in Southern California with the fires. What do they throw on those fires? That bromide. That is illegal in Europe for a reason, guys. So we are so bombarded by these toxins. And I do a detox program a couple times a week. That in conjunction with my detox supplements and then eating a clean diet as much as you can, you're going to feel like $1 million. And I love this as a tool because some people don't know where to start when they think they're addicted to eating the wrong foods, or they don't know how to exercise. This is going to build up that ATP, that life force, that energy within the body. So you go, okay, I've got energy. What am I going to do? It's kind of like if I have my cup of coffee, I better be able to go work out because I can't just sit with that energy. It's kind of the same thing. And I did do an experiment. I love my taste of coffee, but I went without my coffee for a week, and I did a 5-hour energy program, or just kind of mixed up with the different energy programs. Didn't need the caffeine. So if you're someone that needs to get off that caffeine, or if you need to build up your adrenals, so many people are suffering from adrenal fatigue or chronic fatigue. That is a great way to get that cellular energy so that you have the energy to to work off of. We just have a minute or two left. Is there anything that we're missing? I mean, there's so much more, but that you definitely want to talk about today?
Sarah, I think more of a gift, and it's to any of your listeners who have not experienced or had the opportunity to experience a BioCharger. Go to our website, which is biocharger.com, and there's find a BioCharger near me, and go ahead and make an appointment with any one of the businesses that are listed in that. I mean, all over the world, we've got 3,000 installations worldwide. We're in 44 countries outside the U.S. So it's hard not to find a location that wouldn't be near you. And they will offer a complimentary BioCharger session. So it just gives you a chance to get an experience of what we're talking about. You can it's our gift to you, and I'll also get to talk to the business owners and hear some of the experiences they've seen with their own two eyes as a result of the BioCharger.
Amazing. And there's a reason that Tony Robbins has multiple of these machines and travels with them. He doesn't have just all that energy naturally. He's boosted up to do his conferences. I use it. I love it. When I'm traveling, I miss it. But I always know that regardless of how bad my body feels during my trip and when I come back, I know I'm going to be restored within 24 hours because of the BioCharger. So I'm super excited to share it with everybody. If you have questions about it, make sure you can find information on my website, sarabantahealth.com, and make sure you listen to our other podcasts that we had Jim and Jim on. And thanks for tuning in. And thank you guys for coming on again. If you need my help with your health concerns, if you don't know where to start, diet, supplements, BioCharger, or machine, feel free to reach out to me at sarabantahealth.com. Happy to put together a protocol for you, and join my free group coaching on Telegram. There is no downside. Ask me more about the BioCharger. I share daily tips and tools to improve your health and answer your questions, and you'll be surrounded by a community of people who are on a similar path. I was at rock bottom at once. I was you. And it's really hard. It's overwhelming. Where do you start? All these toxins, all of these diseases, you don't know where to start. And I can help you do that according to your appetite for an extensive protocol or a very small one, where to start. So there's more information on my website, sarabantahealth.com. And don't forget to follow me on social media at Accelerated Health Products. You can catch this podcast on over 100 platforms, including Spotify, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Just search Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show, and I'm on a mission to share my healing message with everyone who is ready to listen. So help me with this goal by sharing this podcast with a few of your friends who may need my help. And remember, I'm live every Monday and Tuesday, and you can use coupon WELCOME10 to get 10% off your first order. Thanks again for joining us here, and have a great week.